We're still sinking. Shit. Get you out of here, Doc. You hear me? How, man? The doors are stuck shut. Shit! This wasn't how it's supposed to happen, Irish. Cracker, take my gun. The fuck you thinking, Doc? The fuck you thinking? For the wolf to survive, it's got to chew off its own leg. Fire! Negative, don't do it! Now, Wrecker, shoot out the window. That's an order! Don't you fucking do it, Wrecker! Save yourselves. Get out of here. Get out of here! Fucking bullshit, man! You hear me? Shoot out the window!
While likely an afterthought in the minds of most players who enjoy the Battlefield series, Battlefield 4's single-player campaign is actually pretty good, at least in my opinion, compared to Battlefield 3, not to mention it's very visually appealing. In some sequences, especially like there at the beginning, it looks fucking amazing. It certainly just goes to show how far we've come when it comes to making realistic-looking digital characters. Now, the game in itself, like I said, I think it's a lot better than Battlefield 3 as far as single-player goes. And I really enjoyed Battlefield 4's single-player campaign, as short as it is, and as pretty cliche as it is. But it just felt a lot better than Battlefield 3. Especially the shooting and most of the sequences where you're engaging plenty of combatants. One thing I can also appreciate is the fact that the single-player campaign, we can run it at higher graphics settings than we can the multiplayer. Of course, multiplayer is going to be much more variable in terms of performance. But we still sort of have to figure out, what's going to be optimal for the 7750 when it comes to graphics versus performance in this game. So I decided to just go ahead and start off with all high settings at 1920 by 1080p, including HBAO, but I did not have MSAA enabled. And I am sort of, I guess I could say, surprised that we are getting a fairly consistent 30 FPS out of this game on the Radeon 7750. I wasn't too sure if that was going to happen after playing the multiplayer and just not being able to hit that mark at all. But here, it's a lot more stable. Of course, this is a single-player game, so it's been designed to be graphically stable for whatever platform it's running on. But, as I just mentioned, there are times where it dips below 30 FPS and just doesn't feel as smooth as we want it to be or it could be. Moving outside towards the factory, it becomes even more apparent that we really just have to lower our settings down somewhat to increase our performance, because right now we're below 30 FPS, which that's a threshold we just can't deal with here. It just feels not smooth enough. So what I like to do is I took out all my post-processing AA, as well as lowered the HBAO down to SSAO, and instantly we're getting a massive boost in performance already. And I must say, at this point, I was very impressed with the 7750, the fact that it was handling all this stuff at 1080p and almost 60 FPS in some areas. We're pretty much on the cusp of PS4 visuals with this game. Now, of course, the PS4 is running at 1600 by 900. It's not running at 1080p. It's running at 60 FPS, yes, and it's probably running HBAO and FXAA, both of which we are not running. But for the most part, we pretty much have an analog of the PS4 version right now, but with 1080p. And I can appreciate that. I like to run games at 1080p. I feel sort of sorry for the Xbox One users who are still getting games in 720p. The visuals are nice, yes, and the frame rates can be 60 FPS in some games. Battlefield 4 here is a supreme example of the fact that Xbox One version runs at 720p in order to gain, or in order to capture 60 FPS on that platform. Now, interestingly enough, the 7750 is about 2/3 as powerful as the graphics array that's in the Xbox One. It's about half as powerful as what's in the PS4. The fact that we're getting what we're getting here is pretty nice. I said it before, I'm pretty impressed that the 7750 is pulling off the performance it is now at 1080p and still looks pretty damn good and very, very similar to the console versions. It just feels so good to use this pistol at better than 30 frames a second. Especially here at 45, it makes targeting just so much easier, and it feels so good to just aim those shots and just to hit those guys. God, it feels good. I love this pistol. It's really fun to use in single player. And if you want that many more frames per second, let's take a look to see how medium settings with SSAO and even medium deferred anti-aliasing are handled in that same sequence we just played. So immediately you can see we're at 60 frames per second. It's obviously going to go down as the action changes on screen. But those extra few frames per second, the closer we are to 60, just the smoother it feels, the better it feels. And the visual downgrade is realistically not that bad. Here's my recommendation. If you want better graphics, I would go with the high presets at 1080p with SSAO enabled. Don't have any deferred anti-aliasing, which is a form of FXAA most likely. Don't bother enabling it. Of course, don't bother enabling the MSAA. Either of those two things are likely going to kill your performance. At least not kill it. MSAA will kill your performance. FXAA not so much, but it's not that important to me, especially since we're running at 1080p already. But you can get rid of those two things, and the game still looks really good, and it plays very smoothly. Now, if you want it to play even more smooth, lower all those high settings that we had where they were down to medium. Keep your SSAO. Still, once again, skip the MSAA, and the game plays even smoother, but still looks acceptably good. The difference between the lowest settings and the highest settings in games these days, at least in most games, tends just not to be as stark as it used to be back in the early and mid-2000s. I guess I should also chalk it up to how optimized this game is for any of the platforms that you play it on. I'm sure that it helps that both the PS4 and the Xbox One use the same graphics core next architecture that this 7750 uses, although if I remember correctly, what's used in those two consoles is actually the second generation GCN, although in terms of just overall performance, realistically, they all perform just about the same. Alright, so my name is Blitzvogel. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Like it if you did. Subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on any more stuff like this. I have at least, let's see, what other games am I going to test with the 7750? Going to test Shadows of Mordor. I don't know if I have any others that are really that important to me to test. Well, who knows. But at least Shadows of Mordor is going to be on the way. So stay tuned for that. Hope you guys have a good one. Thank you so much for watching. I will check you next time.